Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of Vertical Stars Podcast 4th season. How my loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. Enjoy this amazing interview because Mark Jackson boards the mothership. You know him as Isaac on the Orville. Now come aboard to go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Jackson. Thank you for coming to Traverse the Stars Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's totally my pleasure. So I always start off with a question of inspiration. So, what inspired your love for acting, and who your earliest influences?
Ooh, well, of course, I mean it was at school for me, but I wasn't very young. I wasn't one of those kids who rushed up to their mum and was like, "I want to be a star." I didn't really get into acting and theatre until I was about 16. I was at school and my girlfriend at the time, and that would be a shock for anyone who knows me now, uh, said, kind of dared me to audition for the school play, which was a production of Funny Girl, the musical. And I was like, yeah, whatever, okay, I'll audition for that. And I did, and like thoroughly enjoyed the process. Not only the audition, but the casting, finding out the part. This sort of feeling of inclusivity was very exciting from the get-go. So, unfortunately, the show never got made. We never went into rehearsals for it because there was some drama about casting the female lead. It's so typical of the theatre, it
Yeah.
seems. Anyway, so that never happened. But from then on, I had the bug really. And my drama teacher at the time at school, Deborah Crouch, who I think is in Hong Kong now. So, hello, Deborah, if you're listening. She was really inspirational for me. And she was very serious about drama. She took drama seriously. She took art seriously. And I think that's a really refreshing perspective. And I don't mean in a stuffy way. I mean, in a way that this is a career. This is some way to express yourself in the world at large. And I just thought that was amazing. And I had a great music teacher there as well called Andrew Wright, who got me singing. So I did a lot of musicals at school. That was sort of how I started. Now, I don't do musicals now. You don't want to hear that, but I can't sing like that. But and I wish I could. What a superpower! So yeah, so that's how it all started really, and they were really really encouraging, along with my art teacher Richard Cunniff, who I still see today. He did all the sets for the school productions, and I just remember him being so inspirational and just so inclusive. Like all of them would just let you hang around after school, helping with the production. It was magical. It really was. Yeah, that's how it all started for me.
Now, cause obviously, as you mentioned, you got kind of dared into being an actor, as you kind of stated. So, where did you go to look for how to actually become an actor? I mean, was it just a natural? You read the lines, things you start figuring things out, or were there things that you thought to yourself, I can practice doing this, I can work on this kind of acting?
Well, in the early days at school, it was very much just a production by production basis. We did one a year, and I used to get so excited when the cast list was announced. I'd wait weeks for it. I'd pester my teachers about it every day. When's it going to be announced? When is it going up? And they would just put up a piece of paper on a board in a corridor, and that would change my year. Really, it would make my year. I'd be like, wow, this is what I'm going to do this year. This is the pinnacle of my year. Um, I think when I got to A level, so that's like last 2 years in college for you guys, I I started to realize that I quite like to do it as a profession. And we had a career day where all these people from different careers were brought in to talk to kids about their careers and if they wanted to do them and give them information on them. Um, and I can't remember who did it, but one of my teachers brought in this actress who was living locally to come and talk to me and only me, like no one else wanted to be an actor. Um, and she was, well, this was all in Holland, by the way, where I kind of grew up, but she was British. as well, and she'd been living in Holland for a few years. And she came in and she was like, "Well, okay, so here's how it works, really." And I had no idea, and I don't think many people know how life as an actor really works. You know, the practicalities of it. So she just sort of took me through the steps, really. Um, Having said that, I don't think I did follow those steps because I'm pretty sure she'd have said to me, "Go to drama school," which I didn't straight away. I went to university. My parents, quite rightly, I suppose, in some ways, said to me, "Go and get a degree in something that you could use for something else in case you don't want to be an actor or it doesn't work out or whatever, a safety net of sorts." And I sort of understood the practicalities of that, so went with it really. But I also sort of secretly thought I could be an actor from just going to university. Um, and I think perhaps if you go to Oxford or Cambridge here in the UK, you could probably do that. They have sort of fast tracks into the system that way. But I went to University of East Anglia in Norwich, and by the time I'd finished that degree in English and drama, I realised, oh, I can't now go and be an actor. I've got to go to drama school for another 3 years. So that's what I did. I went to Bristol Old Vic Theatre School in Bristol, a fantastic school, which was set up by Laurence Olivier way back in the day. Patrick Stewart went there amongst many others. So it was a wonderful time there. And yes, through those 3 years of quite intense drama training, I did learn how to be an actor, or certainly learned the skills that you need to be an actor, and then was sort of thrown out into the big bad world.
Kind of funny that you mentioned Patrick Stewart. 'Cause I'm just started reading his autobiography, the
Oh,
memoir. So it's actually kind of interesting that you're talking about that because, and I'm finding it. I'm still at the point where he's just learning. He's just, I think, just entered his college, for acting. So I'm just getting at that point of his book.
oh, fantastic! That's
It's
great.
fascinating. It's fascinating listening to artists talk about the art of acting because I think a lot of people do assume that it's something you just kind of you read a script, you go, oh, okay, so I just do this, and you walk into the set, it just happens. But
Yeah.
I imagine it's and Stuart's also talking about it's far more complicated. That there's practice voice, there's practice on. I assume you're also studying literature and how the actual page things are happening on the page. Is that part of it as well?
I think there's lots of different approaches. At drama school, we were taught various different ways of, getting into a text. You can, for example, we did some restoration comedy, and for that we did about 3 weeks of table work where we all just sat around a table and dissected the text and went into exactly what it meant, so everyone understood exactly what was happening, which is useful if it's a slightly archaic piece. Shakespeare as well, really useful for that. Um, so that's good. I guess if it's a modern play and it's quite obvious what people are talking about, then it's more intuitive. I don't know. I mean, you're also talking about theatre, the differences between that and TV and film. Theatre, there's a sort of if you're lucky, there's a 6, 7 week rehearsal process where you get to really get into the text before you put it on its feet. With TV, there's like no rehearsal at all, and you very much are hired just to sort of get on there and do it. So if you need to do any process, you really have to do that by yourself at home before you go. I think film, there's more rehearsal if there's the budget. But yeah, and every actor's different. Some just need to have a cough and a cigarette, and they can go on and perform their best. But whereas others need to extensively warm up, do months of rehearsal and um, character analysis and various things to get into the part. But I think as you get older, as you go on, you find your own process. Uh,
Now, I'm talking about stage, TV, and film. How much of acting is understanding the space that you're in? Because obviously the amount of space you have on theater, you have a stage. On film, you have whatever the camera can pick up on just that one shot. How much is it an awareness of where you are in space is affecting the acting?
Of where you are in the you're not talking about space here, so I'm just
The
trying.
the space as in how much room you have to do your performance within
Oh,
either a shot, which is obviously TV and film, versus a stage where you can you have more freedom to kind of go where you want to go on that stage, I think, unless I'm totally misunderstanding how that works.
yeah. I mean, someone once explained to me one of the greatest differences between theatre and film work is that with film work, the director tells you where to look, obviously. And with theatre, as an audience member, you can look at anything you want. Um, you can let your eyes wander around the stage. And I think that's a really special difference that is granted to the audience in respect to the two. So, in terms of acting on a stage or for screen, yeah, I guess with screen it depends what scene you're doing, really. But most scenes are fairly static, I guess. Um, and you have this sort of effect with the cameras and the lights and the 100 crew that we had on the Orville coming really, really close in, and then you do these sort of like semi-whispered but kind of charming lines. And I mean, I didn't do any of that because that's all really naturalistic, isn't it? Unfortunately, Isaac doesn't get to do that. But I think there's that, and then with the stage, you have to be able to speak so that the back row of the audience can hear you, and that's not shouting. That's enunciation and projection. Um, so in a sense, you have to inhabit a much bigger space when you're on the stage, even if the stage is quite small. Um, you have to really project the performance out beyond your body. Whereas with filming, you can really luxuriate in bringing the camera and the sound and the whole sort of atmosphere in. It's like a little tornado that sucks all the sort of creative energy into one spot. Whereas with theatre, it's blah, you've got to get it out there. So yeah, very, very different. And it does affect your performance, obviously. I've never been asked that before. Nice one.
Oh, hey, voice for me for getting something new. The other interesting thing is the role of a director. As we know, and as I've talked to different actors and different directors, not to get too specific on any one director. There's different ways that directors present what they want. There's directors who are basically they say kind of like just they do the scene, like just do the scene, and they kind of worry about special effects and everything else. There's ones that are very actor specific, and then there's stage directing as well, where they can still advise you what you want to do, but once you're on the stage, I guess you kind of can at that point can do what you want because they can't stop you in the middle of the set. How much does the director impact what you're going to do, or is it more of that's interesting and then go off and do what you want to do anyway?
Well, first of all, I'd say that unless you've been given that particular freedom, if in a stage performance you just go completely rogue and do whatever the hell you like on stage, that's very naughty and will not make you popular with your other actors. They won't like that at all. I think within reason you have some freedoms to create nuance and differences between your nightly performances on stage. Um, as an actor, on stage, I've tended to enjoy a director who says, right, well, you're coming in through that door. At some point, I need you over here by the sofa. And then I'd quite like you to, go and get a glass of water over here towards the end of the scene and then leave through that door. And I quite like that because that gives me a bit of structure and then I can sort of do what I want to within that. Um, so that's quite fun for me. I think there are probably other actors who just need the doors that they come in and from and then leave from. But you always have to consider the other actors in the scene with you. This is it's not a one-man show. Of course, if it is, you can do what the hell you like. But if it isn't, then you need to work in harmony with the other actors. And it's the director's job really to have the big plan that can uh, bring all that together. I think putting too much responsibility on the actor to come up with not only a character but a performance that involves all of his movements, and to see that bigger picture is probably unfair. I think you want the actor to sort of exist within this sort of magical bubble almost um, where they can believe that they are walking around in the world like we do without understanding the greater mechanism. Yeah.
Now, the other thing you mentioned as well the idea of going rogue. Now, I'm just guessing, and I may be totally wrong on this because I wasn't there. When like for instance, like on the set of Orville, right? I assume someone like Seth MacFarlane and some of those actors go rogue sometime and do like the ad libs in the middle of a scene, something like that. Is that true? And how, as an actor, is something that's preferred? Like, you like the actors going like doing their own thing and ad libbing, or do you kind of want things structured like this is what's the scene, this is what I prepared for? Please don't make me go off a script.
I well, for the Orville, for example, there really isn't any ad-libbing at
Oh
all.
wow.
It's a very precise script, and it goes through many iterations before it is delivered to the actors. So yeah, and I mean, and that's a testament to how excellent the acting is. That if you've watched it and thought, wow, I mean, that must have been an off-the-cuff magical kind of quip from somebody. That's just a very good joke, well performed, actually. Um, so that's the truth of the Orville. And I often watch shows and I'll have moments of like, is that improvised? I wonder if that bit's improvised. And I think more often than not, it isn't. In my experience of learning about these things, which is fascinating. It really is fascinating because there's that sort of fine line between something feeling like almost like the actors stepped out of the character for a moment to kind of make something funnier,
Mm.
um, and actually keeping within the character and delivering something that that character would say truthfully. Yeah. So no, actually, it's all heavily scripted,
That's
and
cool.
you really can't put a word out. You have to say exactly what's on that page,
Yeah,
and quite
makes
rightly
sense.
so. Yeah.
Because so someone like Seth MacFarlane, having watched also Family Guy, he just felt like someone who would constantly be just like riffing as he does a scene. It's amazing to think that that's all scripted when he does his Orville.
I think with Family Guy, it's a bit different. Um, for a start, it's a cartoon. You obviously you record all the voices before you animate. I'm pretty sure that's the case. Um, so in a sense, you can hone the script in the recording studio with no obligation to anything that's gone before. And the other thing is with Family Guy, which I adore and I watch all the time, is that you have these bits, don't you? And it tends to be, like one of the characters going off on, I think they're called Lazzis. That's the Commedia dell'arte, like word for it. Where they go off in a bit, right? And it's something that will go on and on and on and slightly modify and on and it gets funny and then it stops being funny and then it gets funny again, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like when they fall over and they hurt their knee, and Peter's like, or whatever, like all those bits, right? Then you can ad lib and do all that. Yeah. And knowing Seth, I'm sure he does, because actually you can almost find better comedy in the moment with the performance. But that's a whole different ball game when you're on set, because, before you get around to filming the scene, you all gather on the set, the director's there, as I say, 100 crew are there, lighting, sound, everybody's there, and it's all very much right. Where's everyone going to be? So everyone knows how to light it, knows where the sound needs to be, where the microphones need to be, all that kind of stuff. Because if you go rogue, then you won't be heard, you won't be lit,
Mm.
and and then that affects the other actors because they won't be, seen lit in the right place for the cameras. So it really is quite a specific art form. But I'd say with the cartoons, then it's probably a bit different. Yeah.
Now, when they talk about acting, because obviously the phrase everyone uses is acting is reacting, right? Now, when you have been on a show like The Orville and you've been around the same actors for, several seasons by that point, versus let's say going on a stage or another show where you're either guest spotting or you're introducing for the first time. How does that being familiar with your cast members help affect you as an actor?
Are you saying does knowing the people who I'm going to go back to working with?
Right, because once again, knowing how, 'cause I assume when you've been around some of these actors for a while, you can kind of guess how they're going to react to a scene, how they're going to react to what you do. Does
Oh,
that affect what you do versus the first time maybe on a stage when you first find a new actor who may either not give you the reaction that you want or not be giving you back anything because they may suck as an actor? Who knows?
I guess, yeah. If you know the actors, if you've been, well, if you know the actors and you know the characters that they play quite well, I mean, I think that's probably the difference, isn't it? Because a good actor will react through their character rather than just react as themselves. So yeah, and I think with a long-running show or a soap or a sitcom or anything like that, the writers also begin to rely on knowing how the
Hmm.
actors will react through their characters as well. And that's very useful because it means you can start to create a lot of rhythm with their writing and write quicker as well. Um, again, that's quite fun. Again, I've never really been asked that before. I don't think I ever think, oh, they're going to react like this. I mean, partly because you've got the script in front of you, so you know what's
Hmm.
going to happen. Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain degree, you can all when you read a script and they're actors and their characters already. You do obviously imagine exactly how it's going to happen in your head, and usually it is that way. Certainly, you can often be surprised though. Uh, but then, conversely, joining a theatre company for the first time and starting rehearsals with them is wonderful because there's so much going on. You're getting to know these people, and actors are such interesting, unique, varied people. They're wonderful to work with. So that's always a fascinating journey. You're all learning your parts at the same time. You're learning this play, this beast, this world, how to operate within it, and you're doing all that together, and it's incredibly bonding. So in so many ways, actually, the really lovely part about doing a job is those early days when you get to create together. That's really fun. And I'm not saying that to work with the Orville crew again would be a bad thing. It would be lovely. It would be really nice, actually, and I think it would be a lovely homecoming. But yeah, I think it's an embarrassment of riches either way you look at it.
Now, when you think of a character again like Isaac from the Orville, which feels like there's two separate performances. There's the actual body movements to make the character seem real. Then there's your voice connected to it. Is that is the fact that that works so well for you? Is that a product of your experience in theater? Is that a product of just being a good actor? What was it from your history as an actor that made that feel so natural for a character that is totally not, obviously, because of the once again, you're losing your face, you don't have the expressions, you don't have I assume the voice was recorded somewhat differently than the live action stuff because of probably the difference of being heard underneath all the costume. What part of your experience made that work?
Yeah, I mean, we tried to record it all live, and use that dialogue that was in the first season, but it just sounded like a guy in a helmet, so we couldn't use that. But we do record it live just for reference, anyway. And then I go and record with Seth in his recording studio, all the lines sort of a few weeks later type thing, which is always really nice because you get to revisit the work you did. And I can change my performance if I want, which is kind of
I was wondering, like, is there any moment you thought to yourself, now that you got to go back and look at it, like, I should have done it this way, and does that change thing when you make that decision to tweak what you were going to do on the set?
well, I think there's some freedom there. But there's certain rhythms you have to respect that you did originally. But inflections can change. and really change the meaning of a line. So that's quite fun to play around with. Generally, I remember what I did just through muscle memory, so it's kind of fine. But now and again, Seth will ask. He'll always ask for a few different versions, so that's quite useful. Yeah. Well, so I came from a theatre boy. I came from theatre, and until doing Isaac, and certainly since, I have never had to cover my face up before. Um, so that was, a shock. I knew it was going to happen, by the way. It wasn't like I wasn't hoodwinked into playing Isaac. Um, but yeah, it was an unusual thing because, of course, actors always rely on their faces, don't they? Um, even dancers do. Even dancers do. I've recently learned that to really appreciate dance, you have to be close enough to the stage to see their facial expressions because that changes everything. I used to think it was all about shapes, but it's not.
Mm.
So, and the theatre jobs that I'd done, I did quite a variety, but I did do a lot of physical theatre parts. I toured with the National Theatre here in England, and we did a production of One Man, Two Governors, which you guys might know because it was on Broadway with James Corden. And I played an 87-year-old waiter in that kept on getting knocked down the stairs backwards, and I was doing backflips and all manner of things and landing on crash mats from 10 feet high. And, so I was always a physical actor. And I've always played kind of weirdos, to be honest with you, sort of like outsidery, alternative characters. So Isaac kind of fit in really well there. Uh, the physicality of it, I've said so many times before, but it was very much reliant on the costume. It was restrictive in some ways, which helped actually. And it was nice to be able to fight against that restrictiveness as well to create a fluidity. It felt strong, that, and it felt like it gave me and him a sort of strength. So the physicality kind of came. It certainly improved, I think, over the first season, and certainly into the second one. And then the voice. I mean, really, what you do here on the show is what I do on set, and I sort of have to have that performance. I do have to have that performance ready when I get onto set. It's not something that I can just sort of make up later on because the other actors rely on it as well. They need to feel like they've got Isaac there. So yeah, I think pretty much everything I had done and leading up to that point helped me with Isaac. It was
Now,
useful.
and I've talked to a lot of actors over the years of doing the show, and the one thing I find that they always say is that the most difficult part is not the acting, it's the waiting between roles. And every actor has that space where they're not, they have to that waiting. So what do you do in that space that keeps you alive and active when you're not on set or stage?
Yeah. The key to surviving acting is not acting. That's what I've always said. A more succinct version for you there. There you go. It is. It's punishing. To be honest with you, it's absolutely punishing because the one thing that you love doing, you don't do for often relatively long periods, and it is absolutely brutal. Actors are such special people. I really believe this. They're creative. They're kind. They're social creatures. They want to build stuff together with other people. That's the spirit of theatre, which is what got me hooked and gets so many people hooked on the world of acting. It isn't always the acting, that actors are drawn to. It's the world of it, the world of theatre, the world of community and all that. So then to have an actor who's out of work for a bit is honestly very difficult. And it's an art medium that is kind of unlike many other art mediums. It's unlike music, it's unlike painting, it's unlike drawing, it's unlike writing. I think it's kind of unique in a sense that you can't just do it. You have to be asked to do it. Someone has to call you up and go, all right, here's some money. Come and do it next Tuesday. You're starting at 10. Like writers, painters, musicians, they can just make the work whenever they want and then try and sell it or whatever, but they can do the work. Whereas actors can't just do the work. I mean, you can do a monologue in your bedroom, but that is a surefire sign of madness, if you ask me. So it's why you find a lot of actors, performers, putting stuff on for free because they're like, it's so important to be able to share art with their kind of art with the world, and they want to do it so much that they end up having to do that. And it's why they get taken for granted, a lot of performers, really, particularly early in their careers. I mean, the amount of stuff I did for free, ridiculous, really. But yes, it's difficult. It's very difficult. And I encourage any actor to have another creative outlet just for themselves so that they can feel like they've created something every day when they step back. And it makes a huge difference. The industry is pretty quiet at the moment, has been for the last couple of years. Lots of different factors, the strikes, COVID, the collapse of streaming. No one's really, the big studios and networks really aren't prepared to take a risk at the moment on anything sort of small and interesting and a bit alternative. So you're just seeing a few big blockbuster series and TV and films, which means there's a lot less work out there for actors. To scratch my creative itch, I started painting in the last 2 years and have effectively launched myself as a painter, which has been wonderful here in London, that is. And if you want to see my art, you can go to @MarkJacksonArts on Instagram. That's arts, not arse, just in case you were wondering. So yeah, and honestly, it has just been wonderful to do it. It has given me great autonomy. I've been able to explore so many things about my creative process that I can't when I'm not acting. And it's kind of been life-changing, really. Yeah.
Now, for the listeners, since you said it, we're going to add a link to the notes to your Instagram page for your art so people can see it.
Cool.
Because I want to make sure they can. The one thing that interesting when you create as a painter, which is different perhaps than an actor. When you're an actor, you're performing, but no matter how personal the performance is, you're doing it for other people, right? You're acting for other people because you want them to see it. For painting, are you painting for yourself or for other people to see?
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, you can just paint for yourself and have a lovely life. And I was doing that. But I sort of looked around me one day and I had so many paintings and I thought, oh, well, I might as well try and sell these, right? Because this is impractical. I mean, my studio was filling up with works. So I did. I kind of just put on a show, really, which looking back was either pretty brave or pretty stupid, because I think most painters wait at least a decade before they do their own solo show. But I think, and this is what's wonderful about actors. I took my sort of acting chutzpah with me and went, right, that's it. I'm just going to do a show. Why wait? I always feel like I'm playing catch up generally in life, but that was a specific example. And so I just put on a show and it was really fun. It was so fun just to kind of bring all my friends together in this capacity. And I'm kind of glad I did it as well, because I think a lot of my friends just think I doss about all the time and I'm a bit of a waster. So when they came and they saw 30 odd paintings on the wall, I think they were like, oh shit, you've been doing stuff, right? Okay. You're not a complete layabout. That's good. So that was quite satisfying. But yeah, I think, and it is very exposing and quite scary to share your art with the world, because there's no filter between you and that canvas. Whereas, of course, acting is all filters, isn't it? Really, if you think about it. It's all filters, and at the same time, you need to have this direct channel into the actor's soul. It's very strange. But with painting, no filter, and the paintings themselves are the performance. Yeah, it's really great. It's a lovely complementary career to acting, because it it provides a creative outlet in a very different way. Um,
Now, when you think about acting, obviously acting is a way to tell a story.
mm.
When you're painting, are you telling a story? Or are you trying to bring life to an image or to an idea? What is the impetus to that the the start of your painting? Anyone painting.
Well, I think it varies for the painter, to be honest with you. Um, and what I like, I don't think a painting has to be about or of anything.
Okay.
And that in itself is such a freeing thing. Obviously, acting is the opposite of that. Um, it has to be, of the character and about the sort of intention of the character, the goals of the character, or whatever. And that's within the greater framework of the world and the script and the story and blah blah blah. Um, I think one of the greatest things about a painting is just trying to capture an essence of something or a moment or just a brief feeling. I think that's what's really beautiful. And, good acting does that as well in a sort of way. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm sort of doing. I am working figuratively quite a lot, which is fun. I thought I'd just do abstract stuff when I started out, but I kind of missed the people. So I've been using people as well. Um, but I kind of want to keep an abstract element to it because I think one of the nice things about art is that the viewer has to meet it halfway. They have to they have to look at art and come up with their own thoughts and feelings about it and response. I mean, and it can be that's a bag of shit, on to the next, right? And that's fine. But if it's like, oh, that makes me feel uncomfortable, or oh, that reminds me of that lover I had, or whatever, that's amazing. That's really nice. That's the work that they put into it. So I think for me personally, as a painter, you want to keep it sort of vaguely vague enough, that's terrible English, but vaguely vague enough that the artwork and the viewer have to work together.
Is it hard to give up your art, not by selling it, but in the fact that once you create the art, and I mean, true of acting as well, but maybe more painting. The other person, as you said, now gets to make what they think it's all about, and it may be wildly off what you wanted them to think. I mean, sometimes you might even be thinking, "Shit, that's not what I was going for." But is it hard to surrender your?
It's really hard. It's really hard because they become like babies to you. Particularly if they've sort of hung around quite a lot. You can't like there's always works that you can't seem to get rid of, right?
Yeah.
So they kind of hang around and they become, oh, that one, and you lug it across whatever city you're living in and put it up on various gallery walls and then take it down again because it hasn't sold and then bring it back and then suddenly it sells. And it's kind of gut-wrenching, really, because they do take on personalities of themselves. And sometimes I walk into my studio and all these sort of unfinished paintings are hanging around and they're like demanding kids screaming at me. And it's hard that because you do have to tend to them. I know this sounds ridiculous, but it's just how it feels. So yeah, it is kind of hard sometimes. Sometimes it's a relief though, to get rid of a painting because you thought, well, I'm either going to have to paint over that or just burn it, and then it goes. It is a relief. Yeah.
Is it when like when you're acting as well, there's a finite time of acting, right? You deliver a line, maybe more than once, but still the line is the moment, right? When
Mm.
you're doing a painting, when do you know you're done with it? I mean, is there a point where you're just like, this is as much as I can do? Is it just because the canvas is now filled up and you can't do anything more? Is it just because the idea finally came to life to you?
Well, you don't, and someone once said, I wish I could remember who all these people are who say great things. Someone once said, a painting is never finished, the artist just stops. And that's bang on, really, because you could just keep going and then, and you often ruin it if you keep going. Knowing when to end is tricky. I think with acting, I mean, often, with TV, film, you'll do the same line eight, nine times in all the different takes, then you move on and it's never said again, you know. Um, but then of course it's immortalized in film, you know, in digital form or whatever. So that's special, and it's wonderful to do film work because you know that it's added to the great archive of screen, and that's immensely satisfying and feels. And I think this is it. This is what I'm going to get into actually. Is talking about legacy because that feels like you've got an acting legacy there. Theatre, for all of its wonderfulness, you know, you do it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that in itself is a form of beautiful madness that you come through. Um, but it's gone then,
Mm.
you know. There might be a sort of slightly dodgy recording of it somewhere, but it never comes across well, I don't think, theatre on screen. But then it's gone, you know, and it just lives on in people's memories. And it's so ephemeral. Yeah, there's no legacy there. It's weird, but still one of the best things you can do as an actor. So, and of course, painting, legacy, legacy, legacy. It's there right in front of you in a frame on the wall, and I love that. I think it's I feel like paintings are sort of gifts you give to the world. You know, you put them out there, hope that someone will like them, I guess. Um, but they sort of happen because they have to happen, paintings, and
Mm.
that's really nice.
Now, for an actor, the scariest word for an actor seems to be the word typecast. For a painter, is that something that's a thought or not a thought
You get typecast.
as a painter?
Well, I think I'm just trying to think how that would translate to the world of painting. I
Sort of
think what can
like,
happen. I think what can happen with painting is that you start to see which kind of pieces people like of your work, and then you can typecast yourself by continuing to just make those kind of pieces. I think that can happen. But you know, that is, and I suppose once you get to gallery level, you can have galleries asking specifically for a certain style or a type of subject or anything like that, you know, and they can start to effectively typecast you. I guess so. I haven't encountered this yet, but maybe I will. Um, but also, when it came to acting, I'd love to have been typecast in my career. How brilliant that would have been. Hugh Grant worked his entire bloody life because he was typecast. God, that would be good. But no, I've just played an assortment of weirdos, lovely weirdos. Uh, maybe that is typecasting. Maybe I'm a lovely weirdo. I don't know. But typecasting with acting can be immensely useful, actually. Maybe not satisfying artistically. I don't know, but it can be career-wise, and if you know, money-wise, it can be very, very practical.
now, before I let you go, I'm going to ask a question that you probably asked 1,000 times, but this is one everyone's going to be wondering about. Have you heard any rumors, scuttlebutt, or whatever about season 4 of Orville?
Rumors. Wow. Well, I know that it's not dead, the Orville, um, which I realize is completely strange for the world of Hollywood. A show like this would either been killed by now or, you know, brought back. But that isn't how the Orville works. The Orville works in mysterious ways. I know people are working on it, so I think that's very encouraging. I think I think we have lots more stories to tell with the Orville. And I know how Seth's mind works, and I know he loves the show and he feels there's more to say. But I will say this, considering what's happening in the White House, it feels
Yeah.
like the world needs the Orville right now. And when we started the Orville, uh, he'd just gotten in for the first time, and I flew out to America under Trump's America, and that's how we started the Orville. So it feels like a good time to bring it back, if you ask me.
I would agree completely. I didn't think that 2016 would be viewed as Trump light because apparently when we thought like wow this was awful, looking back,
Yeah,
not looking at what's going on now, like oh that was the
yeah.
best option of what we were getting with him. This is now so much worse.
Well, exactly. And times of adversity often create the greatest stories, don't they?
Hmm.
Well, the greatest need for stories, that's for sure. And if you look what we did in the first three seasons, with the subjects that we covered, they feel even more relevant now, to be honest with you. And I think the Orville's clever like that. The writers are really good. They talk about bang on subjects that we're dealing with right now, all the issues of today, in a way that is so digestible. Um, and it doesn't, punch you in the face. It gives you the room to think about it and make your own opinion, which I think is absolutely vital in our current climate where we have shit shoved down our throats constantly by social media and opinions in the news and all this kind of stuff. To be able to formulate your own educated response to something is a precious commodity. And I like to think the Orville does do that for people.
Like I said, I really did think the Orville. It was such a wonderful show. It has the best elements of Star Trek while being its own thing. And I don't know if it will make people feel better or not feel better. From those of us in the States, at least half of us really hate what's happening right now. If it makes you feel any better, at least half
I
of
know
us.
at least half of you, and I think that number's growing I would hope. Yeah, yes. And the thing about the Orville, which is always great, is that it's a hopeful show.
Hmm.
There's always hope. These times will pass. But how lovely to have had a flame in the form of the Orville, perhaps, to guide us
Hmm.
through them. So we'll see.
Well, it'd be great to have the Orville back. And I want to thank you, Mr. Jackson, for talking with me. It was an absolute honor, sir. And Alexa, we'll have the link to your art in our notes so people can check it out. If there's any other websites or anything else you want attached, please let me know. But it was an absolute honor, sir.
Absolute honor to speak to you too. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Have a good day.
Bye.